Hi, I'm Bill Harding. I'm the CEO of Alloy Dev and of Amplenote. And in this video, I am going to attempt to talk about a number of different Amplenote related topics that I've been meaning to make videos about for over the last couple months. Hopefully I can do this in one fell swoop, and I'll add links in the description for the video so that you can just jump to a single part of this if you only want to hear about one aspect of Amplenote that I'm going to discuss today. But I'm going to try to cover four different areas of what Amplenote can do and how that can tie into our new calendar and how users can benefit from that calendar. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of the idea execution funnel and where that is at as of March 2021. This is our new homepage that we'll be launching, in a couple days. And it talks about how we have these four sections. And each of these four sections is designed to encapsulate one aspect of how people go about generating ideas, refining ideas, making them into tasks, and ultimately getting them scheduled. And right now, each of these different aspects of what Amplenote provides is covered by a collection of different apps. And we think that it's going to be easier and more efficient for people in the long run if there can be a single note-taking productivity app that can really capture the best of all these different areas or these different aspects of evolving an idea into something that gets done. So the first of the sections, or the first of the pieces of the idea execution funnel that people will encounter in Amplenote is Jots. And this is comparable to, say, Google Keep or to Apple Notes. It is a really bare bones way to be able to capture an idea really quickly when you don't want to have to think about the title of a note, and you don't want to have to think about what tags to assign to the note. You don't really want to think about anything. You just want to be able to take this maybe spark of an idea that you've had and get it written down so that you can think about it later. Maybe you'll get rid of it. Maybe you'll do something about it. Who knows? Who cares? That's the starting point of what we call the idea execution funnel. The next section of it is the notes. And the note view of Amplenote allows you to basically expand upon or evolve the kernels or the nuggets of ideas that you might have captured in the Jots mode. Notes is great for when you're researching topics that you want to publish or understand better. It's great when you're taking a little piece of an idea that you originally captured in Jots mode, but you want to figure out how to make it better by sort of progressively thinking about it over multiple days or weeks or months. And Notes mode is most equivalent to, say, Evernote or Notion, apps where you are primarily dealing in text, but you can start to create tasks in there, and you can start to define some aspects of what those tasks mean to you. In Amplenote, the aspects that you can declare for a task would include, does this task seem urgent? Is it something that needs to get done in the next couple of days? Or is it important? Is it something that corresponds to what your goals are? Is the task going to be kind of fast to get done, in which case you should probably consider doing it more sooner, or is it going to take longer? Is the task due at a particular time so that you certainly should be working on it by then? All of these are aspects of tasks that Amplenote allows you to define, and that usually within the notes view, people will start assigning those types of attributes to a task. This graduates up into the bona fide or the dedicated tasks view, where we will extract the tasks that you have created in your notes and group them together by basically by however you want them grouped together. But tags is the main way that we allow you to group them, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the next section. So I won't talk too much about what tasks mode is, except to say that it will automatically extract all of the tasks that exist within your notes and put them into one centralized list that you can sort in all sorts of different ways. You can sort it by the score of the task, you can sort it by how recently they were added, you can sort it by when the task is due, view and in a variety of other ways. And finally, the calendar is the newest Amplenote view mode that we are offering. That is going live by the time you'll see this video, and I will cover that in detail in the last section of this video. So all of that, I think, sets the stage for trying to understand what tags are in Amplenote and how you can best use tags. And so, unfortunately, the short answer is that there's a lot of ways that you can use tags in Amplenote. And so thus, I can't give you any one explanation as to the perfect way to use tags. Really, tags are designed to be flexible, and they're designed to accommodate a bunch of different ways that people might want to organize their lives depending on what their circumstances are at a particular time. But if I were to generalize two types of ways that tags get used and that you can kind of see tags being used within my own Amplenote account here, I'd say that those ways are for the organizing of knowledge and the ability to make collections of notes around a particular topic, and for collecting tasks, collecting groups of notes that will enumerate the tasks that you want to be working on when you are working on a particular project, or when you are trying to get things done within your personal life versus your work life versus potentially your philanthropy and the different areas of your life that you are trying to make progress towards goals. And so the first of the ways that people use tags, which when you look at my base tags here, you can see is primarily represented. These are ways where I'm trying to organize knowledge. And I think that when it comes to using tags to organize knowledge, I actually tend to agree with the Rome approach of tags and knowledge, which is that a lot of the time you don't need tags for notes that you're creating that are just going to be ephemeral notes. In my experience, I've been a note taker for 10 or 15 years now, and I find that probably 90% of the notes that I create are what I would consider ephemeral notes, notes that I'm really not going to need to refer to again later. They're just brainstorming some problem for today, or they're a daily journal about today where I'm trying to kind of collect and refine the interesting recent ideas that I've come across. But even though as of the day that I'm creating those notes, they'll often seem important, in the long term, the reality is that it's unlikely that I'm going to need to go and find those notes again later. And so in those cases, it's often sufficient just to use backlinking to make connections from that note, that ephemeral note of today, to other topics that would be considered evergreen notes, or notes that you will be more likely to reference later. And so the type of notes that I think do lend themselves well to being tagged on behalf of knowledge management and being able to find them again later, it's notes that are parts of a collection that you're going to want to be able to browse later, and especially if those notes are part of a collection that doesn't necessarily lend itself to linking between the different notes. And so some examples in my life, notes that collect information about Get Clear help pages or Amplenote help pages. It's really useful for me to be able to click into Get Clear and to be able to click into the help section and to be able to see these are some of the many notes that I have created that are published to Get Clear, which is one of Alloy's products, and being able to see the full list of our help pages here makes it really simple to realize and to modify the particular notes that are explaining various aspects of the product. Another example is blog posts. I have both blog posts for my personal blog and for the Amplenote blog, for the Get Clear blog. I have a lot of different blogs that I end up contributing to, and it's often useful to be able to go and get kind of a flat list of all the notes that pertain to one of these blogs. In this case, I'm filtering on my notes that have been published on behalf of making Linux touchpads easier to use, and so I have accumulated over the course of the last couple of years, probably 10 or 20 different notes slash blog posts that pertain to this topic. And so it's useful to be able to remember what I've already talked about and being able to reference back to those notes in future blog posts that I might write when I'm writing about the topic of Linux touchpads for my personal blog. And so those are a couple examples of where I think it can be useful to use tags to organize the notes that you are creating to basically collect your knowledge and to be able to offload information that you want to remember from your human brain, which has a limited amount of storage space, into your note-taking brain, which has unlimited amount of storage space. But again, I think that in general, it's a good rule of thumb to not overdo the tagging when it comes to knowledge-based or research-based notes that you're doing, because it's pretty frequent that even if something seems like it's going to be important today, at least in my experience, a lot of the time you don't need to refer to it again in the future. And so over tagging notes on behalf of capturing knowledge is kind of a recipe for having a cluttered tag hierarchy that has more depth than is necessary, and thus requires more maintenance over the long term than would be necessary if you just relied upon making connections between notes and using the backlink sections of those notes to be able to sort of organically grow the connections of the knowledge that you're trying to accumulate over time through your notebook. The second type of tagging that I feel like represents probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the tagging that I do is tagging that pertains to particular projects that I'm going to be working on. And so the way that I'm structuring this right now in my ever-evolving approach to tagging is by having a separate section of my tag hierarchy that's simply dedicated to various notes that contain tasks that I know that I'm going to want to work on when I'm working on a particular project. And so I have, as you can see here, a variety of different tags. For instance, the to-do tag for Git Clear contains right now 4 different notes, and each of these notes can be tagged with multiple tags. So you can see that for my main Git Clear to-do note, I have a Git Clear /dev tag, and so this is sort of what helps me locate the note when I want to browse through my notes in the context of knowledge management, and to be able to find all of the notes that I've written on the topic of Git Clear development, many of which will not have any tasks in them, but in the case of this note, it's almost purely tasks. And so this is really useful for when I am in a when I'm in the mindset or when I have the opportunity to work on development for our Git Clear product. I know that I can navigate to the to-do /Git Clear tag either within notes mode or more likely within tasks mode, where I can come here and I can look at specifically all of the tasks that pertain to Git Clear development that I should be considering working on. And thankfully, the task score that Amplenote has baked into it allows this list to be ordered based on the wisdom that my past selves have invested into considering which of these tasks are actually more worth pursuing than other ones. And so in the case of this particular task, which happens to be the one with the most task score amongst all of my Git Clear to-do tasks, you can see it's created 6 months ago. So it's been around for a while. That's a big part of how it's ended up with so much of a task score, because the longer that a task exists, the more time that you open a note that contains a task and you don't work on it, the more task score that it is going to accrue. And the reason we do that is that we want to kind of gradually and hopefully not too painfully nudge the user to remember this was something that I marked as important. This is something that I estimated should only take about 30 minutes to resolve and to make progress on. And so if it's important, if it's only going to take 30 minutes, and if it's been around for 6 months, I really should have worked on this by now. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks I will work on it. But what this illustrates is that by collecting all of the notes that were tagged with to-do/get-clear, I'm able to immediately see that, oh, this is actually a really good candidate if I have some spare time to work on get-clear development, that I should be working on this particular task. Now, because this is our task view mode that I switched into looking at, this isn't the only way that I can sort my tasks. I can also sort them by which ones are newest, oldest, and which ones are starting in most recently, or which ones should have already been started. But here we can see an example of using tags on to the purpose of organizing notes in a hierarchical way that makes it really easy to jump between a bunch of different projects or a bunch of different domains of life in which you're going to want to make progress. And so the reason that this matters in the context of the calendar is that the calendar is driven by this concept of task domain. So jump over into my Amplenote settings. And if I go to task calendar, you can see that I currently have 3 task domains set up. I have task domains for work, which is the main task domain that I use. I have a task domain for personal objectives that I want to be pursuing, and then I have a task domain for what I call aspiration, which for me is a combination of learning, things that I want to learn more about, articles that I've come across that I want to better understand or that I want to incorporate into my worldview, combined with tasks for the projects, usually development tasks that I really want to work on, but that aren't necessarily so important that they would make my work to-do list, because my work to-do list I try to keep organized by what's going to deliver the most benefit to customers and what's going to sort of help the businesses grow the best. But the tasks that I can work on that will grow the company most quickly or that are going to serve the greatest number of customers aren't uh, often completely aligned with the tasks that I personally would like to see the most progress made on. And so this aspiration task domain allows me to have a kind of a grouping of tasks that specifically optimizes for the things that are going to be the most satisfying for me to see implemented as a developer. And so what you can see within each of these task domains is that this is really the glue that makes the calendar function and makes the calendar useful for people that have multifunctional lives, people that have different domains within their life in which you're trying to get things done. And so that's why we allow a task domain to define that the tasks can come from either a particular note. In the case of my aspiration task domain, this is comprised specifically of one note. I've created a note called learning, aspiration, and self-improvement. And so all of the tasks in this aspiration task domain are sourced specifically from this note. And all of the tasks from the aspiration task domain are synced specifically to my personal calendar as opposed to my work calendar or any of my other ones. The personal task domain is not inclusive of any particular note, but rather it's inclusive of all of the notes that reside under the to-do/personal tag. I have a number of subtags within to-do personal, such as chores and hobbies and family obligations and all these different aspects of basically being a human and having a personal life. Which includes, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 different tasks. And so it's easier to specify that personal tasks that I should consider working on as a tag rather than as a note or a collection of notes. And then as I mentioned, the work domain is the task domain that I am sourcing from most often when I'm using the Amplenote calendar. And so this includes all kinds of different tag hierarchies. It doesn't include any particular notes because um, there's just so many notes that comprise the work tasks that I'll be working on that it's not expeditious to try to specify 100 different notes that contain tasks that I'll be working on for my day job, but it does include 4 different types of tags, which all include again, deeper hierarchy tags associated with them. So to do Alloy, I think has to do Alloy employee stuff, and it has a bunch of different tags, and each of those tags might be possessed by 5 notes or 10 notes or however many. And so by having these 4 tags that all feed tasks into the work task domain, it's a really convenient way for me to be able to kind of cast a large net of all the possible tasks that are relevant to my work, and to be able to have all of those tasks show up when I am in the calendar browsing the work task domain. And by a similar token, you can see that my calendars for my work task domain, there's more than one of them. I have my bonanza.com tasks, which I have a specific calendar for. The the offshoot here is that when we're looking at the calendar and when we're looking at the work task domain, we'll see tasks that come that were present on all of these different calendars. And by the same token, when I add new tasks to that Amplenote calendar from this task domain, those tasks will in turn show up on the Bonanza calendar, and they'll show up on the Amplenote calendar. And you might ask, do you want tasks to show up on actual multiple calendars? It depends. As of next week, we're going to allow you to set up calendars within a task domain that can be what we call read-only, which means the tasks from that external calendar will show up on your Amplenote calendar, but if you add a new task to your Amplenote calendar, it won't be propagated out to the read-only calendar. Whereas there'll be other calendars where you want to keep that two-way sync maintained. So if you drag an Amplenote task onto your Amplenote calendar, you want it to show up on your external calendar. So if you're using your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar, which are the 2 types that we connect with, you're able to see the tasks from Amplenote that you dragged on to your Amplenote calendar. But that's really a kind of a matter of, I guess, personal preference and just the nature of how the calendar will be most useful to your particular use case. But we're trying to offer a lot of flexibility here and make it as easy as possible to have a two-way sync between your external calendar and your Amplenote calendar, but also make it easy for you to be able to feed events from your external calendar onto your Amplenote calendar so that you'll be able to see the constraints for your day and not be scheduling tasks that you should be working on within Amplenote over a meeting that you already had sent to you in your email that your Google Calendar knows this meeting exists between 1 and 2 p.m. You want your Amplenote calendar to know about that as well, and that's the benefit of linking your Google Calendar, a read-only Google Calendar, into your Amplenote task domain. And so, with all of that as preface, let's look at the calendar itself and how it works. And so, first of all, I'd mentioned that task domains define how the calendar is interacted with. And lo and behold, you can see here the 3 task domains that I was showing on the previous page. You can see the aspiration task domain, which is connected to only my personal calendar and has only the tasks from the one particular note that I set up as being associated with my aspiration to do more learning and to work on development tasks that I'm really personally excited about. You can see the personal task domain, you can see the work task domain. So if I switch over to this work task domain, now I'm seeing the events that have been scheduled on my external calendars. I have a meeting earlier today with Anne Lohr from Nest Labs. It was a really informative and amazing conversation from somebody that knows so much about productivity that I really respect. And so knowing that that event was already scheduled for my day allowed me to make informed decisions about which of these tasks over here in the sidebar I might consider working on. And so first of all, this sidebar is draggable. So if you decide that you want it to be smaller or wider, do that. You just hover on this, on basically the border between it until it lights up. So that's this first upper left area is where you choose the task domain that you want to be focusing on. The next area that you can observe over here is the sorting mechanism. So I'd mentioned that in my work task domain, I have 4 different tags that are specified as the kind of the feeders for tasks that are going to show up in this calendar sidebar. But since I have 4 different tags, and since those tags collect apparently 76 different notes that have been tagged with to do slash whatever. Um, there's a lot of different ways that I might want to find the tasks that I intend to work on today. The way that we default is the task score, because that is combining the wisdom from your past self that knew that a particular task is urgent, knows that a particular task is not going to take very long to get done. It basically is a way for us to have signal that makes an informed decision about which tasks you should be giving attention to as a potential really high uh, ROI task to be making progress on. But if you're just working from a daily jot and you kind of it's the morning and you just woke up and you want to be tackling tasks that are motivating to you as opposed to tasks on here that are probably going to take more willpower to get started on. You can sort by the most recent tasks, and you can see these are tasks that primarily came from my daily jots, the daily jots that I've made from the last couple days, where I just kind of in the morning will use it as a sort of daily journal slash daily task hybrid, and uh, collect all of the different tasks that I think would be fun or interesting to work on a given day. And then, of course, we have the whatever sort mechanism, which is basically randomly sorted. We call it whatever because we can get away with it. It's funnier, but sometimes you just, especially if it's a personal to-do list, it's less clear that there's any particular best task to work on from a personal to-do list. And so the whatever tag is a fun way to have exposure to tasks that you might not have thought about for a while, but uh, could be worth dragging onto your calendar to put on your schedule. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to show was this drop down. This allows you to switch between different calendar view modes. So what we've been looking at so far is the weekly view, and since it's Friday, the week is mostly done and thus mostly empty, but I can go to next week and you can see a handful of things that I have scheduled for next week. We can look at the month and see the various events both from my Google Calendar that are scheduled and from my Amplenote calendar that I've dragged onto here. And you can see the daily view. If we jump back to today, we can see this interview that actually is already done now, so I can check it off. I also already made a note of my best and worst events of the week, which is a kind of weekly tradition of mine, so I can check that off. But I can also move to Monday. I can basically to any day. So let's look at actually it's a good opportunity to segue into how to use the calendar to schedule a new task. So uh, I don't like to schedule work tasks for the weekend because who does like to schedule work tasks for the weekend? But I like to use the weekend as a time to kind of focus on the aspirational tasks, the tasks that pertain more to learning and to the specific features that would be most satisfying for me to see developed. And so the aspiration and the personal task domains are the ones that I'm drawing from most often when I'm thinking about scheduling my weekend. And so for this weekend, something I'm really excited to spend more time thinking about and researching is how we can make embedded notes within Amplenote load more quickly. And this really came from the conversation with Anne Lore earlier today, where we were sort of expressing our mutual frustration with WordPress and how onerous it is to um, edit and to modify WordPress blog posts when you just want to make like a little teeny change. And so Amplenote has embedded notes, which is a great way to uh, be able to use WordPress as your shell, just to have URLs and to be able to tag your blog posts and potentially to be able to integrate with all those WordPress plugins that exist. But then you can use Amplenote to embed a particular note within your WordPress blog post. However, the one aspect of this that I feel like still could be polished and a little bit more perfect is the load times when you are first calling up a WordPress blog post that has an Amplenote embedded in it. And so what I would like to work on tomorrow is to explore whether I can speed up the load time of an embedded Amplenote within a WordPress blog post so that it will basically be imperceptible, and a WordPress blog post that has Amplenote content embedded in it will be indistinguishable from a standard WordPress blog post. And so you can see what I did here is I just clicked on 8 a.m., which is around the time I usually will wake up on Saturday and have a little bit of time to pursue personal projects. And you can see that down here, it focused this new uh, quick task adding mechanism that we've added on behalf of the calendar. And as a default, it has chosen the note that is associated with my aspiration tag domain or task domain. And so when I add this new task, it's going to be placed within that note. And you can see that it's also automatically selected the day and the time that I had clicked on the calendar. So let's say research improving load times. And voila, now I have scheduled for tomorrow that I can know tomorrow morning. I sort of already have uh, decided in advance what it is that I want to be paying attention to. And so I can select this task. It's going to take me a lot more than a half hour to figure out how to make embedded notes load more quickly. It's probably going to be a morning long project. And so I can really easily drag this to take the entire morning. And so now this will be reflected both if I were to go out to my weekly view. It will also be reflected on the calendar, the personal calendar that I have synced to this task domain. And it is going to make it easy for me to remember that I've already made a plan for where I want to be focusing my time tomorrow, and thus I don't have to spend time tomorrow morning thinking about that and sort of wondering how my day is going to be structured. So if we jump back to my work task domain, let's look at next week. So I have a dentist appointment on Monday. That's unfortunate part of being alive, I guess. But I don't have that much else scheduled for Monday morning yet. And so I could click on Monday morning, and again, I can add a new task down here. But most likely what I'm going to be best served to do on Monday morning is to work on one of these pre-existing tasks that I've already identified as having a high ROI, and in particular, addressing the emails in my inbox is something that I'll try to do every couple of days. And so what I can do is I can take this task and I can drag it over to say 9:30, which is probably when I should be back from the dentist, and give myself, I'd say, a good hour and a half. That'll be enough time to answer emails across all my different inboxes, respond to the Amplenote users that email me, which I deeply appreciate. Thank you for to those of you who get in touch with me and help me decide what we should be focusing on Amplenote. And so this way, it's again very easy for me when Monday morning comes around. I'm going to see, yeah, there's a lot of big blocks in this day that are empty. I like it that way because there's always going to be urgent tasks that come up. There's always going to be exercise and lunch and all that kind of stuff that you'll need to schedule around. But the Amplenote calendar here is making it really easy for me to visualize how my week is laid out and what my obligations are going to be for next week. And so I can kind of get a visceral and visual sense for where the empty blocks of time are and where I could schedule more of these high tasks for ideas to the extent that I have the opportunity to work on them. And so I guess the last thing I'll show here before I end this is removing a task. If I decided I didn't actually want to write a blog about the Amplenote calendar, it's easy to do that if I just drag this over back to the calendar sidebar. It's now unscheduled, it's back in this list, and I can schedule it for another time. And so I'm out of time for right now, but I hope that this video has been instructive for people that are considering using Amplenote for tags, for task domains, or for the calendar. I'm hoping that we'll have somebody who is great at videos make a better version of this in the next couple weeks, but I at least wanted to show off kind of the broad strokes for what the Amplenote calendar offers so far, and the way that you can use it to organize and pursue your long-term goals. And so thanks for watching.